All right, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. It's about 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Um, Originally, yesterday morning was going to be the last kind of session of this live stream journaling, but I decided I wanted to add something else, and so um, I've got tonight, and I'm going to be on tomorrow morning as well. So, counting tonight, there's two more sessions. And tonight's session, instead of being about embellishments like I had on the website, it's going to be about using text, and specifically text as a graphic device. And when I say graphic, I just mean a visual device, using words and text as more of a visual, more as an image, and not, yeah, they're gonna be words, they're gonna have meaning, but it's more about thinking of them in visual terms. And we're going to be kind of diving into several different techniques for using stencils, for writing, and then also for hand drawing some of our letters and our words. So I want to go ahead and show you what I'll be working with. So let me change that over. Okay, so as always, I've got my journal, and I have it open to this page because it has some of that text. So the word discovering, okay, it wraps around, and that becomes, very visual, stands out a lot. But then I've also, maybe it's hard to see, I've stenciled in some numbers up here as well. So I've got my journal. I've got some watercolor paint, and I'm going to do something with the watercolor paint and the stencils, just to kind of show a different technique. I have stencils. I have some thin plastic ones. I've got some smaller kind of blue ones, but the letters are fairly large. And then I've got a few other stencils as well, just some different styles. I like these thin ones because they're easy to transport. And even the big sheets, I can fit them in my journal and take them anywhere that I want. Also have some different pens, so some different pens to use. And then I've got a pencil just in case I want to draw with pencil instead. And then I've got some of my writing that I've done. So over here I've got some writing that I've done on tracing paper, and then some that's on the little paper. So the writing here, this is kind of where some of my ideas and some of my phrases and some of my words are going to come from. So anyway, so that's kind of what I have, and then we'll kind of dive in. But before we get started, just remember, if you want, pop into the comments, say hi, and then you can also, if you want to, put like where you're from. So it's always nice to kind of see where people are tuning in from. So text as a graphic device. So in an earlier session, I talked about using words and making lists and writing and using big ideas, but didn't really get into so much about text and the visual or the graphic nature of the text. So that's kind of what I want to do now, and I think this might be a good spot to start, just because I have sort of this blank area in there. I'm going to take one of my bigger stencils, maybe this one right here, okay, and I'm going to lay this down. And one of the things that I like to do sometimes is to use the lettering stencil to create a background, or to add texture to a page. So just like I had done the very first time, I'm going to use some watercolor paint. Well, I have my Inktense, Derwent Inktense paints here, but I'm going to use some of the paint. And I don't want to have a lot of water in my brush because they will bleed through. And I'm just going to paint into the stencils. Now, using the stencils is pretty counterintuitive because a lot of you know, because it's going to run, it's going to bleed. The watercolor paint is very, very wet, and it's going to run underneath the plastic. But I like that, especially just to kind of do something random. Now, I've used these stencils before with paint, so they're kind of, there's some green paint mixing in with this blue that I'm using, but that's always fun too. If I don't want it to bleed so much and run so much, I could use a sponge underneath there. So this is very similar to what I was doing the very first night, the very first session of this live stream journaling. But what I find is that, you know, it's always great to go back and revisit ideas, but using the stencil with the letters, you know, we're used to seeing the letters. You know, that's how we write, that's how we communicate on a day-to-day basis. But by using the paint and just stenciling them in without any rhyme or reason, you know, I've created this interesting kind of background. And, you know, the letters are kind of fuzzy and they might be hard to read, but it just adds this texture to this page that's really, really interesting. So if I wanted to, I could take a hair dryer and dry it, but I'm going to kind of skip that part and just kind of let it all kind of bleed together. So that's kind of the first technique. So if you've never used watercolor paint with stencils, like the letter stencils, it's a great way to create a background or to create textures on a page. Okay, so that's one way. Another thing I can do, if I just jump around, and one of the things that I like to do a lot is to do some random stenciling, like I did here. So, you know, there's no really rhyme or reason why I put the numbers there. It was just something like, oh, I think I want to have the numbers 1 through 5 there. So that's another way to kind of add some lines and some shapes, and they're recognizable. So let me go ahead and find, maybe I'll use some of these little stencils here. Thought I had, oh, there they are. So I thought I had the numbers. You know, so I could do numbers, or I could do letters. I could do ABC. I like to use numbers a lot. I could always turn them if I had enough space, but I think this is be a good space here. I'm going to turn to my ink pen. And again, this is just sort of some random stenciling. There's no real rhyme or reason other than it creates layers. We recognize the numbers. So it just kind of gives us something to relate to. We kind of wonder, like, why are the numbers there? Are they counting something in particular? And over here, the 4 kind of goes into where that tape transfer is, but that's all right. Okay, maybe I want to have the 6 there. Okay, and then if I wanted to, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember, with this journal, I've been really thinking about how things wrap around. So I could pick up with the 7, 8, 9, and 0 over here. So this just acts as another visual element, just like the little leaf stamps here, or the map collage that I included. But I think because you know, we're kind of programmed to see letters and numbers and recognize them, we kind of start to wonder, like, well, why is it there? So we connect to it, I think, in a slightly different way. Okay, so, I've got my numbers, and just kind of creates an element, kind of fills in the space, and then because it wraps around, it creates that continuation. So stenciling is great, just this random kind of randomness, to add layers, to add texture, to add just to fill in some spaces. But then I can use it a little bit more purposeful. And so let me see if I can find a space where I might want to do a little bit of writing or stenciling words. This is a good page. It's rather empty right now, and I've been kind of working my way through. So when I started this book, the front page has gotten a lot of work, and I have the phrase "in the process of," and then it wraps around unfolding. And so unfolding's kind of become this theme for this book. I don't always do that, especially in my kind of day-to-day, but then it kind of picks up, even though it's not a continuation, but this notion of discovering. But what am I discovering? Direction. So I hand wrote the word direction. Finding my way ties into that idea of direction. So it kind of makes sense that maybe I want to put something here. And so that's when I want to turn. So I do this writing a lot. And I did that, I think, forget exactly when, the 4th session or whatever, talked about stream of consciousness writing. So in here I have quite a bit of like writing, but then I've highlighted some of my words. So in each of these I've got sort of some big ideas, some operative words that are kind of coming up. So here it says awaken creativity. I like that word awaken, so maybe I want to use that. Or I have a phrase here that I really like, I am becoming. And so maybe that's what I want to do. Maybe I want to do that right here. And I could do that in anything, any material that I want. And I think I'm going to do that with my pen. Let me get my paints out of the way. All right, so I'll use my smaller stencils. And what I like, I have a whole bunch of these, and there's different styles, different fonts, and I'm just gonna stencil it in, and thinking about how I want to do it. Do I want to do all uppercase? Do I want to do a mix of uppercase and lowercase? I think I'll do uppercase and lowercase. So Now, one of the things that I find is that I am all the time misspelling my words, especially when I'm stenciling them or drawing them. Now, some people will argue, they'll go, oh, well, that's because it's, your left side, right side of your brain. So we've probably all heard that, where we say, like, oh, if you're right side dominant, that means that you're more artistic. If you're left side dominant in your brain, then you're more analytical, more mathematical. And that's something that I think Betty Edwards really brought up in her book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Well, the problem is that theory, that dual brain, left brain, right brain theory, has been debunked over the years. And they found that it's really not true, that your brain really works in tandem, the two sides of your brain. And so I think it's funny that we still kind of say that left side, right side. But what I find is that a lot of times, though, as I'm drawing or as I'm stenciling, I'm not so focused on spelling correctly. I just get caught up in drawing the letters or stenciling the letters, and that I forget the spelling. So I do find it helpful to have, so actually I'm going to pull this out just to be on the safe side. So if I have my little writing here, and then that way I can make sure that I'm spelling everything correctly. So that is just a little bit of a hint if you find that you're constantly misspelling as you're stenciling and drawing letters. Write it out first, have it in front of you, so that way you could really just double check and make sure that you are spelling things correctly. But then sometimes it's really interesting whenever you misspell something and then you have to figure out a way to fix it, especially because I do a lot of work with my pen. So become ing. All right. So you notice that I don't even use any kind of guidelines as I'm stenciling. What I typically do is try to line up the letters with the ones before it. Some people will get out rulers and draw in guidelines with a pencil, and feel free to do that if that works for you, but for me that's just too much. That's just too much. I want to kind of do it quickly, and you can even notice that I'm just doing it straight with the pen. Some people are like, oh well, I want to do it with pencil, make sure that I spell everything correctly. So make sure I am becoming, hey look, I spelled it correctly. Now it's really hard to read that even from where I'm, maybe even with the video it might be very difficult for you to read that, but in tomorrow's episode, embellishments, I might come back and do something to that to really help that pop out. But stenciling is definitely an easy way, and I have a whole wide variety of stencils. I only brought a few of them out because I have a whole stack of lettering stencils. Okay, so let's talk about drawing. So I talked a little bit the other night whenever I was doing the writing part about this, but let's kind of focus a little bit more on hand drawing letters, because some people love to do it, some people really hate to do it. If you are kind of like a beginning artist and maybe you're not as comfortable or confident with what you're doing, so I think I'm going to take that word awaken, and let's do it here. So I think I'm going to do it with the red to make it stand out. So awaken, just make sure that I am going to spell it correctly, but I like to use all caps a lot, but not always. So it might be very difficult for you to see on the video that word. So I find that one of the easiest ways to create text that really stands out is to use my own handwriting and just write it really big, and then I'm just going to go back and I'm going to thicken the line. So what I find I do is I draw like skinny rectangles around, and then I fill it in. I really don't like my handwriting, but as soon as I start doing this, there's something about it that I really like, and I can even vary it where, I don't know if you can tell, but it's skinnier here and thicker down here. Maybe I want to extend that crossbar on the A. And I just find this is an easy way to, number one, spell something correctly, and then number two, have more of a hand-drawn, more of an authentic way. I don't do a lot with trying to draw fancy letters, and I don't really do like calligraphy, or I've never been very good with using different pens to draw letters. I'm not a great letterer, if that's even a word. But I do like doing this with my own handwriting, and it just makes it unique to me. And what I find is that when I fill in the letters, I don't fill them in completely. I leave some little spaces showing, and it kind of creates an interesting style of letter. It's not a solid shape, so it has a bit of a texture as I color it in and fill it in. And I do like using these thinner pens. I know, that yeah, there are markers, thick markers that could do this real quick. But I like the thin pen, and I like sort of that rough texture from filling them in. Okay, so that probably shows up a lot better now, but it does, the N and the E can get a little bit lost, so I'm going to do one more thing. So I could leave it like that, but now I'm going to take my black pen and I'm going to use that to outline it. Since I have black already in here, that's going to really help that stand out, but not make it stand out too much. So just by going around. So like I was saying, this is a fairly easy way to hand draw letters, especially if you're not very comfortable with drawing letters freehand. Don't know if you can hear my cat meowing, but he wants in. He's scratching at my door. Anyway, so there I have the word awaken kind of stands out. So I want to show you another technique for hand drawing letters, and this time I am going to use a pencil. So maybe, let's see, let me pull out another word. All right, so if I come through and, I can really do this anywhere that I want. Maybe I'll do it on a place where I can erase it, because I want to be able to erase. So if I do it on top of a page that I already have something, it's going to be very hard to erase the pencil. So I can draw on top of it, but then trying to erase it, and sometimes the eraser will pick up some of the paint. So if I come here, where I don't have anything or something like this, I've got this window here, so maybe I want to have something down here. So this word shine has come up in some writing, so maybe I want to put the word shine right here, and then I can do some kind of image that would show through the window at a later time. So I could just draw the letters, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. But if you're not, what I suggest is kind of start out like we did before. Draw with pencil first. And again, this helps you, number one, spell things correctly, and then also making sure things fit. So this just barely fit. So if I wanted to, I could erase it and fix it and make it better and make it fit a little bit better. So my S and H are pretty wide, but then my N and E get a little bit thin. I don't even know if you can see that, but that's the whole purpose, is that I'm using an H pencil to make sure that I can just erase it when I'm done. Now, last time what I did is I filled in the shape, but this time I'm going to draw the shape around it. So I'm just going to use my pen, and so the letter that I originally wrote becomes kind of like the skeleton. So typically though, I don't do this. I just draw the letters first and just be done with it. be a little bit more spontaneous. But just wanted to kind of show you, if you're not too confident in drawing letters, again, just by writing the letters first, then we can create the block letters around it. And there I have the word shine, and it shows up pretty well. And then I can take my eraser. Now hopefully my ink had enough time to dry. So I was using one of those Uniball Vision pens. I do find that sometimes they take a few minutes to dry, and so I'll try to be careful and not smudge the ink too badly. Okay, so just some hand-drawn letters, and again, it's taking my regular writing and trying to make it more visual, make it more graphic. You know, so it just becomes a bit more interesting then. So you know, it's like a lot of times with journaling, whether it's kind of when we think about traditional journaling, we think about writing. And you know, my writing is very small, it's hard to read. Even by writing these operative words, these key words and phrases in a different color in all caps, makes them stand out. But if I just always use letters this way, or if I'm always just using typed text, it gets kind of boring. So again, by creating words and phrases with stencils or hand drawing them, that's one way to kind of add some graphic devices of text, by using the stencils randomly and stenciling in letters or numbers, or even painting. So painting, like I showed you, that's another way to create some more visual, more graphic text that really, like this text here just is a texture. It's a pattern. It's a background, and I can work and do stuff on top of it. But again, I can recognize it. I can see it. So yeah. So that's kind of just a few things. Yeah. There's a lot more that I could do. There's a lot more that I could do to add, and I can add color. I could use a metallic marker. I could do so many things to really pop those letters and those words out, and really bring them, really make them stand out. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in tomorrow's live stream. So tomorrow is sort of the last in this series, and that's going to be at 10 a.m. and I'm going to talk about embellishments, sort of some little things that you can do to add some pop and pizzazz to your pages. Things that maybe you think about are like your finishing touches. So just another thing to kind of think about with your journal tonight, with using words, using text in a way that's going to create more visual interest, more graphic things in your journaling, make words and ideas and themes stand out more. So yeah, so kind of think about that as you're journaling. And then, like I said, I'll do another live stream tomorrow, but I think what I'm going to do is maybe cut back, maybe do this weekly, maybe do live streaming twice a week, maybe Mondays and Wednesdays. We'll see. I'm still kind of working that out. So but anyway, so I really appreciate you joining me. Let me go ahead and just like peek down, see. Somebody has a question about stencils. So how do I store my stencils? In a couple different ways. I have boxes. So for the big stencils, so for these stencils, I've got, so they'll actually fit in my big 11 by 14 journal. I have a pocket, so I can always carry a few of them around. But I do have a box that's big enough for them. And then the smaller stencils, I have a smaller box. So I keep them in boxes. They're the big ones are like 9x12, so they wouldn't fit inside of like a plastic sleeve or anything like that. So just something to think about. Yeah, so I just keep them in boxes. The problem is with the thin plastic ones, they do get stuck sometimes, and I've had them tear. Actually, neither one of these, but some of my other stencils, like the E is missing, the lowercase e is missing the center part. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. And then somebody asked about the video being available. Yeah, all the videos are available on Facebook. So right on my Eric Scott Art Studio Facebook page, if you just click on the videos, that's probably the easiest way. So at the top it says like photos and then videos. Click on that, you can view all of them and they're all there. Or what I'm doing now is I'm slowly getting them uploaded to YouTube and putting them all in a playlist on my YouTube channel. So that's another place to kind of see. I think I've got 4 of them up there now. But yeah, so thanks so much for tuning in. If you've got questions, feel free to post them in the comments. If you have things to share, you've been working and creating in your journal, I'd love to see it. We would love to see it. So either leave it in the comments, or I have that online group. So if you go to, it's the Journal Fodder Junkies online workshop, and if you're not a member, just go there, click to join. I'll approve you, and you can go in. And several people have posted some things that they've been doing. That's a great way. Or tag. So you can always tag me or tag my art studio page, and then that way people can see. Or of course, you can always do hashtags and stuff like that. So keep working, keep journaling, and I'll see you here tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. But until then, happy creating and happy journaling.